It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Best state to start working.
Yeah, and so what we've done in each of these decades is we're trying to look at specific states, like what states are the most conducive for the thing we're looking at, or what states are the least conducive. And so as we walk through this series, we're going to talk about state specific, and we'll kind of give some disclaimers as we go through there.
Well, and you should have questions.
Yep.
I mean, why do people come to the Money Guy shows? Because we're going to help you train your brain on what questions you should be asking. So the first thing you should ask if you're in your 20s is, how far will my money go?
That's basically the biggest question you can ask, because we know, and like anecdotally, we all know this, because if you talk to older folks, they'll say, oh, well, if you live there, well, you have to make this much just to start out. Well, if you live there, it's pretty common. We all know that, but have we ever actually stopped to look at the numbers to say, okay, how much farther does my money go in one part of the country than another part of the country?
So we had FT Daniel get to work, and we said, go find some research. Because think about it. All these publications have, how often do we see these headlines, best city to live in,
Yep.
Best city to retire in. So we knew the data had to be out there. So we just had Daniel go wrangle it up. And here's what he came up with on trying to figure out how far your dollars will go. What's the best 5 states and what's the worst 5 states?
Yeah, so when we look at it, you can see that these are the best 5 states, meaning the value of your dollar will go farther in these states. There's a lower cost of living. You can see Arkansas comes in with a value of $1 is actually worth $1.15. Kentucky is $1.14, Mississippi is $1.16, Alabama is $1.15, and West Virginia is $1.14. So anywhere from 14 to 16% higher than the normal value of a dollar across the country. So these would be states where if you're earning X dollars, it would be more advantageous to work in that state, to live in that state, because the dollars will go farther than if you lived in a different part of the country.
You made the joke in pre-show that this looks like an SEC map.
It's good to be
for
in the
college
SEC,
football,
yeah.
except for West Virginia over there. But it is interesting that definitely dollars go further. But how about where the 5? Where does your dollar go the least amount in the country?
If we're thinking about best places, we need some contrast to worst places, where there are actually parts in the country where a dollar isn't even worth $1. If you look at Hawaii, $1 only is worth about 84 cents. California, 87 cents. New Jersey, 88 cents. New York, 87 cents. And then Maryland, 91 cents. So we're talking about 10 to 13% discounts the value of $1. So if you think about from one state that has a 13% surplus and then another state has a 13% deficit, there could be like a 26% swing there when you look at what your dollar can actually get for you.
I think it's interesting because when we travel to a different part of the world, like if you're going to Europe, you're looking at what is the exchange rate between the dollar and the euro, and that, when you hear about the power of a strong dollar or of a weak dollar, depending upon which side of it is, who would have thought here in America, even though we all use the same currency, there is totally the same thing going on, is that your dollar will go further depending upon where you are within the country. So that leads to, okay, if we know what money will go the furthest, it's also what opportunities are in the area. And the first thing I'm thinking about is if I'm in my 20s, will I have a job? Will I have a job to make sure I can pay the bills?
And I think especially in this time that we're in right now, specifically some of the things that we've seen recently, it's not a given that we get out of college, we have a degree, and immediately we just jump into the workforce. That hasn't been a lot of folks' experience. So when you are selecting in your 20s, when you're just getting out of college, where you're going to go live, you really need to take into consideration the employment rate to make sure that you can be gainfully employed.
So here's something I don't think a lot of 20-year-olds do. And I want to go ahead, because I come from the wisdom of somebody who's in my late 40s, is that when I took my first job, I just was thinking about, I just want the job, not really thinking about where the job was. But as we have found, like I think a lot of people, when you hear Nashville, of course, everybody who's got a great set of pipes or can play the guitar well, they're probably considering moving to Nashville. But most people don't realize, if you want to know who the billionaires are in Nashville, it's all healthcare people. It's all people, because we are a tremendous health hub. So if you are in the medical field, Nashville probably has more opportunities than you might even realize. Absolutely. And you had a great example too.
Yeah, before my wife was staying home, she was a school teacher. Well, one of her co-teachers, his spouse, was studying midwifery, right? So she was going to school here and she wanted to be a midwife. Well, there actually weren't a ton of employment opportunities here. So they knew as soon as she finished her degree, they were going to have to move to some other part of the country just because that specialty wasn't available here. If you are someone who's practicing or going to school for a specialized vocation, it would really serve you well to know what parts of the country that vocation is in high demand so that you can make sure you secure employment there.
So we did, once again, we employed the services of FTE Daniel, and we said, Daniel, I'm sure U.S. News or some publication has come up with the best states to find a job. Here's what he came up with. And this is, like I said, U.S. News. But what did they use? Because this was a little unique when I saw this visually. I mean, because it's kind of the middle to left side of the country. And then is that Minnesota up there at the top? So I was like, man, somebody likes either dryness or coldness. I don't see anything in the South down there. So what did U.S. News use as their criteria?
Yeah, so they used unemployment rate, labor force participation, and the change in unemployment between 2014 and 2017. So the data is a little older now. But what they found is that Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Minnesota, and Hawaii are the best states to find a job. So if you're strictly trying to figure out, okay, where can I go to become employed, those 5 states are probably going to be at the top of the list.
And you don't have to, I mean, because we all know cities also come into play on this. So, fast-growing cities that have lots of connections with universities and other things, as well as Fortune 500 businesses, you're going to have more opportunities. But this is a great head start just to kind of know what to look at. And that leads to, and I think this one really plays into, what's the quality of life like in the area you're trying to live in?
Yeah, so the first two were very qualitative in nature. Okay, how much will I make or how far will my money go? And then what are the opportunities in the area? Will I be able to find a job? Well, those are quantitative. This one is the more qualitative one, and it actually matters. We can't tell you how many times we'll see someone who graduates from college, they go and get that dream job they wanted, and they find they're in an area that they just can't stand. They got to drive 2 hours every day to work, and it's hustle and bustle. You really want to make sure you understand what is the quality of life in the place that I'm going to be living.
Now, I was a little, because once again, older, a little more knowledge and wisdom. You look back on your 20s, you go, what did I do with all my time? Because when you get in your 30s, you get in that messy middle, especially if you're having children. You know, there's lots of things going on that you just don't have much time. But fortunately, when you first come out of college, you're going to look back at those years in your 20s. You might as well make sure that you have a great quality of life to build those memories. So that's why we talk about number of universities in the area. Because the reason we said number of universities in the area is because when you have colleges, that means you have probably sports. You have performing arts. You have, plays. You have people playing instruments. That's one of my favorite things at UGA. And this makes me sound really nerdy, but I love watching live music, was I would get the list of all the master's programs of cello players, all the people, and I'd go around. It wasn't that hard. From the business school, you could walk, and if you had the calendar, you could go watch people that play, in these little mini concerts.
Known you for a long time. You buried that league. Never knew that you did that.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, matter of fact, it was part of a extracurricular activities you could do for music appreciation bonus points. I think I got 100 in that class because I went to so many concerts because I just loved it. It was incredible. But that is something, number of universities in the areas gives you lots of opportunities for free stuff.
That's what I was going to say. The other thing you got to think about is what parks or amenities are available in that area, because we all know when we're in our 20s, when we're just starting out, we don't have a lot of resources. So it might be hard to go to the expensive plays or do the expensive things. But if there are free things like universities, like parks, like greenways, where we can go fill our time without spending our money, that's a great thing to think about.
And then restaurants and entertainment venues.
Now we're spending some money.
Well, I mean, it is. I mean, because I know it's free, but you do want to go out to eat. You want to spend time with friends. Look, I think that's one of the things when we go through, being part of this pandemic, is I think we're realizing how powerful it is to be able to go out with your friends and break bread and just enjoy a good meal. So I think I know a lot of restaurants and hospitality are hurting, but I think a lot of people are going to want to come back to that as soon as they safely can.
And then if you are going to take a job in a more remote area, one of the things you really ought to think about is, okay, what is my proximity to a major city if I need healthcare or whatever the thing may be? And then what's the proximity to the airport? If you're someone who has to travel a lot for your job, you probably don't want to end up settling somewhere that's 2 hours from the nearest airport. You want to make sure you're taking those sorts of things into consideration.
Well, it's not just for the job. You want to be able to travel you enjoy life and build memories. So definitely, I thought that was a great add-in when we added proximity to airport. So that leads to, we told you all the questions to ask, but now you're probably saying, well, what resources
Sure.
can I use to start shopping or looking at this stuff and pulling it together? And here's what we found. So, Bo, share with them what we put up here.
So there's a great cost of living calculator. If you just want to go compare different parts of the country, you can go to bankrate.com/calculator. And there's a great tax resource you can use to look at state income tax by state. And that's just taxformcalculator.com to kind of give you an idea of what are the differentials across the country.
Well, and think about like the state income tax. Here's the example. I thought it was so interesting. My daughter's personal finance homework compared Portland, Oregon to San Francisco.
Yeah.
And everybody knows San Francisco is not the cheapest state to
Sure.
live in, but they took a
Cheapest city, yeah.
$35,000 starting salary for a person and said, what does the state income tax do? I was shocked to see California is actually somewhat, it's affordable from a state income tax standpoint for a $35,000 income, a lower income like that, versus Portland, Oregon. It was a 5% difference for the individual. That has a huge impact if you think about it.
Absolutely.